Okay, Google, what is a podcast?
What's up, guys? My name's Pruitt, and today I want to talk about podcasts. Over the past year, I have been obsessed with podcasts. I've been listening to them non-stop. And I don't understand why more people aren't listening to podcasts. The number one reason everybody should be checking them out is because it's free. It would basically be like if Netflix cost no money and people still weren't watching it. That would be absurd. That's how I feel about podcasts. It's absurd more people aren't spending their free time listening to these things. If you have interest in anything, you can find someone who's making a podcast about it. It's really easy to find something that you love, jump in 2 feet first, and really get attached. And that's what I want to talk about today. There's 3 podcasts in particular that I have fallen in love with. The 3 podcasts that I want to talk about today are Dissect, presented by Cole Kushner, The Nod by Gimlett Media, and Mogul by Gimlett Media. So with that, let's talk about each one. I really can't say enough good things about Dissect, but I'm going to try to keep it short. The basics of it is that it's a musical podcast, and each week goes over a different song from an album. And the season will talk about the themes of the album and break down every song and all of the different intricacies of it, and then bring it all together at the end. The presenter, Cole Kushner, is about to start the 3rd season, and I cannot wait. I would highly recommend this to anybody that likes hip-hop, that likes music, or just wants to have a greater understanding of musical theory and the subject matter. So season 1 focuses on Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, which is a great album on its own, but season 2 just took it to another level because it focuses on Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I loved both seasons. They absolutely blew my mind. Don't pass up on this podcast. Give it a shot. I think anybody who has some free time will enjoy it. Even if you just pick out a couple of episodes and listen to a couple songs, you cannot go wrong. But if you've got the time and you've got the interest, listen to both seasons. It's phenomenal. The next podcast I want to talk about is The Nod. It's presented by Gimlett Media and is co-hosted by Brittany Luce and Eric Eddings. They have great chemistry, and overall the podcast is just a celebration of Black American history. It talks about all kinds of amazing stories that you're definitely not going to hear about or read about anywhere else. I love listening to it every week. It's always something different. There's no general theme other than it's just about Black history in America. I really like the chemistry between the co-hosts. They have special guests that come on, and sometimes they even do live shows. It's just a really eye-opening podcast, and everything about it just kind of keeps me excited for the next week's episode. The Nod is just a lot of fun to listen to because they touch on everything from food to music to movies, just anything culturally significant that focuses around Black culture in America. The Nod is definitely a lot more casual than Dissect, so it has a much broader appeal. And the chemistry between the co-hosts is fantastic. It's definitely one of the main reasons that I keep listening. They kind of banter back and forth and riff off one another. And a lot of times they bring in personal stories and things they've been going through in their own lives and kind of talk about it and flesh it out from a personal perspective. There's been a couple of episodes that I've had to warm up to, but week by week, I've always gotten into them and I've really enjoyed them. I think anybody who starts listening to The Nod is going to stick with it and really enjoy it a lot. The last podcast that I'm going to talk about is called Mogul, and unfortunately, it's kind of a one-off because there's only going to be one season. Unfortunately, the presenter, Reggie Osei, has passed away. The season focuses on the life of a record executive and record producer named Chris Lighty. He was heavy into hip-hop in the early 2000s and really paved the way for a lot of artists that we know about today. Some of the stories that are in this podcast are just hilarious and crazy. The music industry in the early 2000s, especially around hip-hop, was just like a battlefield, and there was a lot of animosity. There was a lot of people coming and climbing up through the ranks, and the stories from Chris Lighty's past are crazy. There's some heavy topics, but this podcast overall is a great story. It has to be real. There's no way you can make up some of the stuff that they talk about. So it's definitely worth checking out. Again, kind of hip-hop centric. Even if you're not super into hip-hop, I think that the story is compelling enough to draw you in. You can think of it a little bit like VH1's Behind the Music. It talks about everything from Chris Lighty first getting into the music industry all the way through to his untimely death. When you listen to the podcast, you're going to hear stories and you're going to hear them talk about people that have become massive in the hip-hop world and in pop culture in general. And it's going to be crazy to think that this person was there and behind so much of it, yet we don't even know that much about him. To be honest, I was personally touched by a lot of the stories and a lot of the episodes of Mogul. Chris Lighty's struggle through his day-to-day life really has a lot of broad appeal, and that's probably one of the reasons Reggie felt like the story needed to be told. I definitely think people should give it a listen. It's very story-driven and very narrative-heavy, and I think that makes it easy to get into. All 3 of these podcasts do a phenomenal job of making you understand the journey of the people they're talking about. It's heartbreaking in some instances and absolutely empowering in others. That's really the power of podcasts, is the storytelling aspect. It's of course impossible to fully understand what it's like to be another person, to be another race, or to be part of a different culture. But if anything can get close, it's these stories. All right, so those are my 3 favorite podcasts right now. Definitely the 3 that I'd recommend to anybody who's looking to get into podcasts, or if you're just looking for something new to listen to. Really appreciate you watching. If you know anybody else that's trying to find some new podcasts, recommend this video, send it over to them. That's the best way to help me grow my channel, just word of mouth. Again, appreciate it. Peace.